morning. You guys are all awake. That's fantastic. I'm really happy to be here. As Evangeline said, my name is Chris Hart, or Christopher Escobedo Hart. You can call me Chris. I'm an attorney at Foley Hoag, which is a law firm based here in Boston. It's in the Seaport District. And we have our main office is here in Boston. We also have an office in New York, in Washington, D.C., and in Paris. I am a litigator at Foley Hoag, so I know you've had a lot of discussions about law and what it means to be a litigator, but just to say briefly, what I do is mostly civil litigation. So I'm primarily helping businesses and individuals who have often it's business disputes with other businesses and individuals, so contract disputes or injury disputes or things like that. Some of what I do is go to trial, some of what I do is argue appeals, and some of what I do is up until that point to try to reach some kind of resolution or settlement before trial or any kind of formal hearing. While most of what I do is civil and commercial litigation, some of what I do is also data privacy and cybersecurity. Some of that's in the litigation context, but some of that is just counseling. And that's just so you get an idea of what I do. If you're interested, I went to Duke Law School and I clerked for a judge in Philadelphia for a year, which was a really great experience. So just things to be thinking about as you're thinking about where you're applying and what you want your career to look like. I am speaking to you here, though, as co-chair of the Boston Bar Association's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and I'm here specifically to introduce John Albano, who I will say more about later. I promised him I'd have a slideshow of him that would take half an hour, but I was told I don't have that much time. The Boston Bar Association, first I'll explain what that is. It is an entity in the greater Boston area of lawyers who come together for all sorts of different purposes. And you'll find that most places where there are lawyers, there are also bar associations, and they're really great opportunities to get to know other lawyers, to learn about what people do, to learn more about your own profession. The Diversity and Inclusion Committee is important because it cuts across practice areas and it's about the entire profession as a whole. And I started serving in that role in September of this year. I'll serve in that role for 2 years. And before that, I was co-chair of the mentoring committee of that same section, the diversity and inclusion section. I take this role very seriously. I think issues of diversity and inclusion are among the most important that we face in this profession. I think that things are getting better in terms of having a more diverse profession, but I think we have a long way to go. And I didn't come here with statistics. Some of you might already know the statistics. They don't look good in terms of what the complexion of the profession looks like. And when I talk about diversity here, and when I talk about my role as co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I am talking about attorneys of color, but I'm also talking about all sorts of different axes of diversity: LGBTQ, lawyers with disabilities, women. The list goes on. There are many axes of diversity that we can be talking about. One way of talking about this in shorthand is to talk about diverse attorneys. I actually don't like that term. But I use it, and everybody uses it, and I'm going to use it here because I think it's important that you know what I'm talking about. But what we do in the Diversity and Inclusion Committee is to try to create awareness about questions of diversity and inclusion, and we try to educate with regard to diversity and inclusion, all to help lawyers make the profession more diverse and more inclusive. So specifically, that includes creating a space for affinity bar leaders in the greater Boston area to speak about their activities. It means creating mentoring programs for attorneys across different axes of diversity. We lead unconscious bias training for lawyers in the greater Boston area. We organize educational panels. So for example, the Boston Globe, many of you might know this already, the Boston Globe had a series on racism in Boston. And it was a multi-part series. It was a really important series of articles. And what we did at the BBA was to invite members of the Globe to come and speak about not only their work in putting together the series, but also to talk with lawyers in the area about how we can think about what the problems are in terms of lack of diversity in the area, but also how to resolve them. And then we had a follow-on where we had lawyers who attended participate in workshops, so that we could think through actual problem solving. I think because we in the Diversity and Inclusion Committee understand that sometimes you can talk the issue to death and actually not do too much about it. And so that's really important. It's one of my goals to make sure that we can be proactive in trying to come together as a profession to increase diversity and inclusion. It's particularly important for me because I personally am Latino. I grew up in San Diego. My mother and grandparents were Mexican immigrants. I grew up speaking Spanish, and I was in my family and in an immigrant neighborhood. I was the first person in my family to go to college, much less go to law school. And so this particularly hits home for me. And one thing I'll say to all of you, based on my experience, is the importance of having mentors, the importance of having a network, the importance of proactively reaching out to people for guidance and advice. I think what you will find is that lawyers, practicing lawyers, professors, anybody who's connected to the law they're always going to be happy to talk to you and give you guidance. And it's up to you to reach out. And I would encourage all of you to do that.